My dad texted, "Don't call or come over. We're done." I replied, "Got it." By midnight, my phone was blowing up with missed calls and messages. "My name is Sterling. I'm 35 years old, and I'm an architect here in Austin, Texas." It was a Tuesday night when my phone buzzed with a text from my dad that stopped me cold. "Don't call or come over. We're done." My heart sank, but I didn't cry or beg. I typed back 2 words. "Got it." That was it. Years of pouring my heart and my salary into my family, covering my mom's medical bills, bailing out my sister's debts, keeping their restaurant afloat, gone in one text. I'd always been the odd one out, the one who chose blueprints over barbecue pits, the one they never saw as enough. But that text, it was a line in the sand. I wasn't going to chase them. By midnight, my phone was blowing up. Missed calls, voicemails, texts piling in. My dad's number flashed again and again. Then my sister's, even my mom's. They were panicking, and I could guess why. I'd been their safety net for years, and now I was done. What happened next flipped everything I thought I knew about my family upside down. Growing up here in Austin, our family seemed like the perfect Texas dream. My father, Arthur, ran a chain of barbecue restaurants. He was a local legend, a man who turned a single roadside stand into a thriving business built on brisket and bravado. My mother, Helen, gave up her accounting career to stand by his side, managing the home and smoothing over his rough edges. And my sister Delphine, for years younger, was the golden child, the princess they pinned all their hopes on to carry the family legacy. And then there was me. I was the odd one out, dreaming of spaces and light, not menus and profit margins. From early on, Dad made it clear what he expected. "The restaurants are our future," he'd say at dinner, his voice heavy with the authority of a man used to getting his way. "You'll learn the business, Sterling." But I wasn't drawn to grease-stained aprons or the smell of wood smoke clinging to my clothes. I wanted to design buildings, homes, places where people felt alive. At family gatherings, while everyone else talked business, I'd be in a corner, sketching on a napkin. One Sunday afternoon, the whole family was gathered in the backyard. The air was thick with the smell of ribs on the smoker. I was about 16, and I'd just finished a detailed drawing of a modern house I'd imagined. I was proud of it. I brought it over to my dad, who was holding court by the pit. "Dad, look at this," I said, my voice full of hope. He glanced at it, a slight frown on his face. He passed it to Delphine, who was sitting beside him, painting her nails a perfect shade of pink. "What do you think of your brother's little hobby, sweetheart?" he asked her. Delphine held the drawing up, her lips curled into a smirk. "It's nice, I guess. But aren't you supposed to be learning how to manage the inventory at the South Branch?" Dad laughed, a booming sound that always made me feel small. "See? Your sister gets it. This is a business, Sterling. A real man's world. This," he said, tapping my drawing with a greasy finger, "is just playing with pencils." The shame felt hot on my neck. I mumbled something and walked away. The drawing crumpled in my fist. That was the moment I understood. It wasn't just that they preferred her. It was that they didn't respect me or anything I cared about. When I told them I wanted to study architecture at the University of Texas, my dad's reaction was exactly what I'd expected. "Architecture? That's not a career, it's a fantasy," he said, his tone sharp enough to cut. "If you're not joining the restaurants, you're on your own. No tuition, no support. Not a dime." My mom stayed quiet, her eyes darting away, already choosing sides. Delphine, then just a teenager, smirked like she'd won a prize she didn't even compete for. I felt like an outsider in my own home, their favoritism a wall I could never seem to climb. So I went to UT on my own. I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs to cover what scholarships didn't. I was a waiter at a diner downtown, the irony not lost on me, and I tutored undergrads in math. The nights were long, fueled by cheap coffee and the sheer, stubborn refusal to fail. My student loans piled up into a mountain that felt insurmountable. My dad never once asked how I was managing. He never called unless it was to tell me about some new achievement of Delphine's. "Your sister made the dean's list again," he'd say, his voice full of pride. He never mentioned that her major was communications, and her college fund had been fully paid for since she was born. My mom's occasional, "I'm proud of you, honey," felt hollow. They were just words, whispered down the phone line before she'd pivot to gushing over Delphine's latest social event. She could do no wrong, even when she dropped a class because it was too early in the morning, or dented the new car Dad had bought her. "She's just finding her way," Mom would say, a gentle excuse always ready. I graduated with honors, exhausted but proud. I had my degree, a portfolio I'd bled for, and a mountain of debt. I landed an internship at a prestigious firm in Austin, and slowly, I started to build a life for myself, a life that had nothing to do with barbecue sauce or profit margins. I thought maybe now they'll see me. Maybe now my success will be real to them. But home was a different story. 5 years ago, Mom fell seriously ill. It was her heart. The doctors didn't sugarcoat it. She needed a complex surgery, and her recovery would be long and expensive. The total cost after insurance was a staggering number. Dad's restaurants were struggling a bit with rising costs, and their savings weren't what they used to be. I got the call from my dad on a Wednesday afternoon. He didn't ask how I was. He just got straight to the point. "Your mother needs surgery. The hospital needs $50,000 up front." His voice was clipped, all business. I didn't hesitate. I didn't even think about my own savings, about the down payment I was trying to scrape together for a small condo. "I'll handle it, Dad," I said. That evening, I sat at my small kitchen table, staring at my online banking portal. The number in my savings account was the result of years of 60-hour work weeks and living on a shoestring budget. With a deep breath, I initiated the wire transfer. I watched the balance drop, a pit forming in my stomach. But it was for my mom. It had to be done. "We'll pay you back," Dad said over the phone later. But his tone was dismissive, and I knew better than to expect it. The only acknowledgement I got from my mom was a text a few days later. "Thank you, Sterling." That was it. No call. No real gratitude. Stung, but I pushed the feeling down. I told myself it was for her health, not for their approval. A few nights after that, I stopped by their house to drop off some flowers. I let myself in with my old key and found them in the living room. They didn't know I was there. I heard my mom's voice, soft and tired. "We should really thank him properly, Arthur. He gave us so much." My dad scoffed, the sound echoing in the quiet house. "Thank him for what? For doing his duty? He's our son. It's the least he could do after choosing to go off and play with his little drawings instead of helping with the family business." I stood frozen in the hallway, the flowers suddenly feeling heavy in my hand. Duty. That's all it was to him. Not a sacrifice. Not an act of love. Just an obligation. I quietly placed the flowers on the entryway table, turned around, and left before they ever knew I had come. My career continued to grow. By the time I was 30, I was a junior partner at my firm, my name attached to several high-profile projects in the city. I was finally making a good salary, enough to start chipping away at my student loans and even begin thinking about my own future. But just as I started to get my head above water, the anchor of my family would pull me back down. And that anchor usually had a name, Delphine. My sister, barely out of her 20s, had married a decent but quiet guy named Liam. With Dad's backing, she had started a series of disastrous side businesses. First, it was a high-end fashion boutique in a trendy part of town. Tanked within 6 months. The overhead was insane, and Delphine seemed to think that managing meant showing up for an hour a day to chat with her friends and use the store's credit card for her own wardrobe. I remember the day that venture imploded. I was in a client meeting when my dad called me, his voice a low growl. "Your sister's in trouble. The bank is calling about the business loan. You need to fix it. Fix it. Not can you help? But fix it." Like I was the family handyman for financial disasters. That evening, I met Delphine and Liam at one of Dad's restaurants. She sat there, stirring her iced tea, looking bored, while Liam nervously explained the situation. They were on the hook for a $50,000 small business loan that my dad had co-signed. If they defaulted, it would hit his credit. "I just don't understand what went wrong," Delphine said with a sigh, as if she were talking about a bad haircut. I had the best inventory. I looked at the paperwork. The inventory she was talking about was mostly designer clothes in her own size. She had run the business into the ground with her own spending. I felt a hot flash of anger, but I looked at my dad, who was staring at me with that expectant, demanding look. So I did it. I took out a personal loan to cover her debt. Delphine never said thank you. Not a word. Instead, 2 days later, she posted a photo on Instagram. She was on a much-needed spa weekend with her friends, a glass of champagne in her hand. The caption read, "Finally de-stressing after a tough few weeks. #self-care, #bossbabe." I felt sick to my stomach. My debt, her vacation. That was just the beginning. Next, it was her lifestyle blog. She needed a professional website, high-end camera equipment, a wardrobe for photo shoots. All of it went on credit cards that I inevitably had to pay off. Then came the multi-level marketing scheme selling some kind of miracle skincare product. She bought thousands of dollars of inventory that ended up expiring in her garage. Each time, the call would come from my dad. "Sterling, Delphine needs help." He never asked her to be responsible. He never suggested she get a real job. The family restaurants, which she was supposed to be learning to run, were just a backdrop for her. She'd show up, rearrange some menus, suggest a new, expensive centerpiece for the tables, and then disappear for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, I was working 60, 70 hours a week, my own dreams feeling further and further away with every dollar I sent their way. I was pouring water into a bottomless pit, and the worst part was, they didn't even seem to notice I was the one holding the bucket. They just expected it to always be full. After years of being the family ATM, I decided to try a different approach. Maybe if I showed them my value, not with money, but with my actual skills, things would change. One of my dad's oldest restaurants, the original location, was starting to look tired and dated. Business was down, and it was losing out to the newer, trendier spots in the neighborhood. I saw an opportunity. "Dad," I said one evening, "let me redesign the space, pro bono. No charge for my time or the architectural plans. It'll be my gift to the family." He was skeptical. "What do you know about a barbecue joint? We need more tables, not fancy walls." "Trust me," I pleaded. "A better atmosphere will bring in more customers. It will feel classic but updated." Reluctantly, he agreed, probably because the word free was involved. I poured my heart into that project. For 3 months, I spent every spare moment on it. I worked all day at my firm and then spent my nights and weekends at the restaurant, sketching, planning, and overseeing the construction. I wanted to honor the history of the place but bring it into the 21st century. I designed custom lighting, sourced reclaimed wood from an old Texas barn for the walls, and created a floor plan that was more open and inviting. I even used a portion of my own savings to pay for some higher-end finishes that weren't in my dad's meager budget, telling him the supplier gave me a discount. The result was stunning. The grand reopening was a massive success. The place was packed, and for the first time in years, there was a line out the door. The local food blogs and even a city magazine wrote articles about the revitalization of a classic Austin landmark. Revenue at that location jumped by 40% in the first quarter. I felt a flicker of hope. I had done it. I had proven my worth in a language my father could understand, profit. A few weeks later, the city magazine ran a full-page feature on the restaurant's comeback. I bought a copy on my way to work, my hands trembling slightly with anticipation. I imagined seeing my name, my contribution finally acknowledged. I flipped to the page, and my heart sank. There was a big photo of my dad and Delphine, smiling, standing in the middle of the dining room I had designed. The headline read, "Arthur's Barbecue, a family legacy reimagined." I scanned the article, my eyes darting across the text. My dad was quoted extensively. "I always knew this place had good bones," he said. "But it was my daughter, Delphine, who really had the vision. She has a natural eye for style. She came in and just knew what to do. She breathed new life into this place. It was all her. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. It was as if I didn't exist." I felt the blood drain from my face. I drove straight to my dad's office, the magazine clutched in my hand. I walked in and threw it on his desk. "What is this?" I asked, my voice shaking with a rage I couldn't control. He didn't even look up from his paperwork. "It's good press, Sterling. Relax." "Good press?" "It's a lie. I did all of this. I spent months of my life on this project. I used my own money, and you gave all the credit to her? Why?" He finally looked at me, his eyes cold. "Delphine is the face of this business. It's good for our brand. You did the work, fine. It was your duty as a son. But she is the story. It's better for everyone this way." I just stared at him, speechless. It wasn't about the work. It wasn't about the success. It was about the narrative. And in the story my father was telling the world, I was just a ghostwriter. The hero was, and always would be, his golden girl. I walked out of his office that day feeling like a fool. I had given them my talent, my time, and my heart, and they had stolen it without a second thought. After the restaurant incident, I pulled back. I focused on my work, on my own life. I was promoted to a full partner at the firm, and I started developing a passion project of my own. A business plan for a new venture, an architectural firm focused on sustainable, eco-friendly design. It wasn't just a pipe dream. It was backed by months of market research. The demand for green building in Austin was exploding. This was my future, my chance to build something that was truly my own. But to launch it properly, to scale up and compete, I needed capital. For the first time, instead of being asked for money, I was going to be the one asking. I needed a $200,000 investment. I thought, despite everything, that maybe this time would be different. This wasn't a handout for a failed boutique. This was a solid business plan with projected returns. This was a chance for them to invest in me, their son. I prepared a full presentation, complete with financial projections, market analysis, and architectural renderings. I invited them to my small condo for a meeting. I wanted it to be on my turf, a place where I felt in control. They arrived late. My dad, Arthur, sat at my dining room table, arms crossed, his face an unreadable mask. My mom, Helen, hovered nervously by the kitchen, avoiding my eyes. Delphine slouched in her chair, scrolling on her phone, barely paying attention. Her husband, Liam, sat quietly beside her, offering me a small, encouraging smile. I took a deep breath and began. I walked them through the numbers, the demand, the potential for growth. "This isn't just about building houses," I said, my voice filled with a passion I hadn't let them see in years. "This is about building a better future for our city. This could put Austin on the map for sustainable design." I got to the final slide. "I'm asking for a $200,000 investment. I'll pay it back with interest within 5 years. My dad didn't let me finish. "A pipe dream," he interrupted, leaning forward. "You think people want to build their houses out of recycled junk? They want granite countertops and cheap lumber, not some fancy green experiment." His words hit like a slap, but I pushed on, trying to show him the data on client demand. Delphine snorted, not even looking up from her phone. "Sounds like a waste of money," she said. "Why don't you stick to drawing houses for other people, Sterling? You're good at that." I clenched my fists under the table, my face burning. I'd spent months on this plan, and they were dismissing it in minutes. I turned to my mom, a desperate, last-ditch appeal in my eyes. "Mom, you've seen my work. You know I can do this." She hesitated, then mumbled, "It just sounds so risky, honey. The restaurants. That's what we know." Her words stung worse than my dad's. After everything I had done for her health, she still wouldn't stand by me. Liam spoke up, his voice soft but clear. "I think it's innovative," he said, glancing nervously at Delphine. "Sustainability is a huge deal right now." For a moment, I felt a spark of hope, but Delphine shot him a look, a silent, venomous command, and he shrank back, saying nothing more. Dad waved a hand, cutting off any further discussion. "We're not throwing money at this," he said, his tone final. "Delphine is working on a new catering expansion for the business. That's our priority. Delphine smirked, a triumphant little smile that twisted my stomach into knots. I tried one last time, my voice rising with frustration. This isn't a handout. It's an investment with returns. I've built my career from nothing. You know I'm good for it. My dad just shook his head. You chose your path, Sterling. Maybe if you helped out at the restaurants more, we'd take you seriously. Delphine added the final, cruel twist of the knife. I wanted to scream. I had given them hundreds of thousands of dollars, bailed them out of every mess, and they still saw me as a kid with a sketchbook. The room felt smaller, the air thick with their dismissal. I packed up my laptop, my hands shaking. As I walked them to the door, Liam caught my eye and mouthed, "I'm sorry." But it didn't help. Driving home didn't feel like driving home. It felt like an escape. Their rejection wasn't just about the money. It was about me. They didn't believe in me, and I was beginning to realize they never would. The weeks following that disastrous meeting were cold and silent. I didn't call them, and they didn't call me. The distance that had been growing for years finally felt like a chasm. I threw myself into my work, trying to find a way to fund my project on my own. But the sting of their rejection lingered like a dull ache in my chest. Then, one Thursday evening, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Sterling, it's Liam. Can we meet? It's important. Please don't tell Delphine." My first instinct was to ignore it. I wanted nothing to do with any of them. But curiosity, and a strange sense of dread, got the better of me. I agreed to meet him at a quiet, out-of-the-way coffee shop on the other side of town. He was already there when I arrived, hunched over a table in the corner, looking pale and nervous. He kept glancing at the door as if he expected Delphine to burst in at any moment. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice barely a whisper. I shouldn't be here. What's this about, Liam?" I asked, getting straight to the point. He took a shaky breath and pushed a thick manila envelope across the table. "You need to see this," he said. I can't be a part of it anymore." I opened the envelope. Inside were bank statements, credit card bills, and receipts. All of them were in Delphine's name, but they were from accounts I had never heard of. I saw charges for $1,000 handbags, luxury vacations to Europe, spa treatments that cost more than my monthly rent. The numbers were staggering. "I don't understand," I said, though a cold, sickening realization was beginning to dawn on me. "It's from the restaurants," Liam said, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and guilt. "She's been skimming. For years. She has a separate company set up, a shell corporation for consulting fees. Every month, thousands of dollars get transferred from the restaurant's main account to that company. It's why they're always struggling. It's why they always need your money." My stomach dropped. The constant cash shortages, the late vendor payments I'd covered, the tough months my dad was always complaining about. It wasn't just bad business. It was theft. "She's stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sterling?" Liam continued, his voice cracking. "I found out a few months ago. I confronted her and she threatened me. Said if I told anyone, she'd tell your dad I was the one who came up with the idea, that she'd ruin me." I stared at the papers, my mind reeling. All those years, I had been propping them up, feeling guilty that my chosen career didn't contribute to the family business. In reality, I hadn't been supporting a struggling business. I had been funding my sister's secret, lavish lifestyle. I was the fool who was refilling the well while she was the one poisoning it. Do my parents know?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Liam shook his head, but he didn't look convincing. "I don't think so. I think she's been lying to them, telling them the costs are higher than they are. But Arthur is smart. Sometimes I wonder if he knows on some level and just doesn't want to see it. He adores her. He'd never believe she's capable of this." I sat there, frozen, the papers spread out before me like the wreckage of a car crash. Liam looked terrified, like a man who had just betrayed his own family to save himself. Before I could even process what to do next, he stood up abruptly. "I have to go," he said, grabbing his keys. I thought you deserved to know the truth. Be careful, Sterling." He rushed out of the coffee shop, leaving me alone with the evidence of a betrayal so deep and calculated it took my breath away. It wasn't just that they didn't believe in me. It was that they had used me, lied to me, and made me the unwitting accomplice in my sister's grand deception. I drove home from that coffee shop in a daze, the envelope from Liam sitting on the passenger seat like a bomb. My mind was racing, trying to connect the dots, to make sense of the scale of the betrayal. Did my dad know? How could he not? Was my mom aware? The questions swirled, making me sick. I got home and couldn't sit still. I paced my small living room, the papers spread across my coffee table. Each receipt was a fresh stab of pain. A $5,000 purse bought the same week I had paid for my mom's medication. A first-class ticket to Italy dated just days after I'd drained my savings to cover Delphine's boutique debt. A part of me wanted to storm over to their house, to throw the evidence in their faces. But another, colder part of me knew it wouldn't work. They would deny it. They would protect her. They would turn it all around and make it my fault. 2 days later, my mom called. Her voice was sweet, saccharine sweet. "Sterling, honey, I haven't heard from you. I was just thinking, I have that old box of your college drawings up in the attic. I thought you might want them." It was a pretext, a clumsy attempt to reel me back in. But I was curious, and there was a part of me, a foolish, wounded part, that wanted to see them one last time, to look them in the eye knowing what I knew. "Okay, Mom," I said, my voice flat. "I'll come by this evening." I arrived at the house I grew up in. Felt different now, alien. I let myself in and called out, but no one answered. I figured my mom was in the backyard. I headed towards the back of the house, but as I passed my dad's study, I heard voices. My parents were in there, the door slightly ajar. I stopped, my hand hovering over the doorknob. "We need to finalize the changes to the will," I heard my dad say, his tone firm and decisive. "I spoke with the lawyer this afternoon." My heart pounded in my chest. I pressed my ear closer to the door. "Arthur, are you sure?" My mom's voice was hesitant. To cut him out completely? "It feels so. It feels necessary, Helen." My dad cut her off. "Sterling has made it clear he wants nothing to do with this family or our legacy. He's off doing his own thing. He doesn't care about us. Delphine is the only one keeping this family together. She's the one who will carry on the business when I'm gone." I felt the air get sucked out of my lungs. "But he's given us so much." My mom murmured a weak defense. "Money is not loyalty," my dad snapped. "Delphine's loyalty is to this family. The restaurants, the house, everything. It will all go to her. It's the only way to protect our legacy. Sterling has chosen his path. He is not a part of this family's future." I backed away from the door, my movements silent, robotic. Couldn't breathe. It wasn't just about the money or the business or the inheritance. It was the words. He is not a part of this family's future. They were erasing me. After everything I'd done, every sacrifice I'd made, they were writing me out of their lives as if I had never mattered at all. I didn't go get the box of drawings. I slipped out the front door, my mind a storm of grief and rage. All those years paying my mom's medical bills, bailing out my sister, saving their restaurants from a crisis she created. And they saw me as disloyal. The betrayal was absolute. And in that moment, something inside me broke. The part that had always hoped, always tried, always loved them unconditionally. It simply died. The next morning, I woke up feeling hollowed out. The grief had burned away, leaving behind something cold and hard. I went about my morning routine on autopilot, the conversation I'd overheard playing on a loop in my head. Money is not loyalty. He is not a part of this family's future. Then, just as I was about to leave for work, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my dad. "Don't call or come over. We're done." The words hit me, but not in the way they would have a week ago. There was no punch to the gut, no wave of despair. It was just confirmation, a final, formal declaration of what I already knew. They had made their choice. They had fired me from the job of being their son. I stared at the screen for a long moment, my hands perfectly steady. This wasn't a moment for pleading or questions. No more chasing, No more trying to earn a love that was never really there. If they wanted me gone, I would give them exactly that. My fingers moved over the keyboard. I typed back 2 words. Got it. I hit send before I could overthink it. A strange sense of calm washed over me. The war was over. I had lost, but in losing, I was finally free. I sat down at my desk, not my work desk, but the small one in my condo where I managed my personal finances. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. For years, this screen had been a source of stress, a constant reminder of the money flowing out to them. Today, it was going to be a tool of my liberation. First, I went to the scheduled payments. The monthly transfer to my mom's account to cover her prescription copays and specialist visits. I clicked the button. Cancel recurring payment. A small confirmation box popped up. Are you sure? Yes. Gone. Next, the credit card I had been paying off for Delphine, the one with the lingering debt from her lifestyle blog fiasco. I had it set on autopay. Remove automatic payment. Are you sure? Yes. No longer my problem. Then the big one. The business account I had linked to my own savings, the one I used to transfer funds to the restaurants whenever my dad called with a story about a slow month or an unexpected repair. It was a direct line from my hard work to their black hole of a business. I severed the link. I removed the account. Unlink accounts. Are you sure? Yes. The umbilical cord was cut. One by one, I went down the list. The cell phone plan my mom was still on, a remnant from an old family plan. Cancelled. The small insurance policy I paid for my dad. Cancelled. For years, I had spent over $300,000 keeping them afloat, hundreds of hours working to fund their lives while they disrespected mine. And they had thrown it all back in my face with a 5-word text message. Cutting those ties felt like shedding a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. It wasn't just about the money. With each click, I was letting go. Letting go of the hope that they would ever see me. Letting go of the need for their approval. Letting go of the boy who just wanted his dad to be proud of him. As I stared at the confirmation emails piling up in my inbox, I felt a mix of relief and cold, clear rage. I thought about Liam's words, Delphine's theft, hidden for years. How long had they known? Had my parents covered for her? Or were they just clueless, blinded by their love for their perfect daughter? Either way, their choice to favor her, to reward her while casting me aside, was unforgivable. That text message, "We're done," wasn't just a message. It was a declaration. They had chosen their side and I wasn't on it. But I wasn't the same kid who had begged for their approval. I had built my life without them, and now I would protect it. Their betrayal had lit a fire in me, and I wasn't going to let it burn me down. I was going to use it to forge something new, something stronger, on the ashes of what they had destroyed. The silence lasted for about 72 hours. 3 days of quiet that felt like the calm before a hurricane. I went to work. I met with clients. I went to the gym. I tried to live a normal life, all the while knowing the storm was coming. The direct deposits I had canceled were usually scheduled for the 5th of the month. On the morning of the 6th, the first drop of rain fell. It started with a text from my mom. "Sterling, I think there was a problem with the pharmacy payment. It was declined. Can you check on it?" I read the text and deleted it without replying. An hour later, another text from her. "Sterling, did you get my message? My prescription is waiting." I ignored that one too. By noon, the drizzle had turned into a downpour. My phone started buzzing incessantly. A missed call from my dad. A text from Delphine. Mom said her card was declined. What's going on? I put my phone on silent and tried to focus on the blueprints in front of me, but it was impossible. The vibrations were a constant reminder. They were starting to realize. The safety net was gone. By midnight, my phone was a raging tempest of notifications. A dozen missed calls, voicemails, a flood of angry, panicked texts. They must have realized it wasn't just one payment that had failed. All of them had. I sat on my couch in the dark, my television off, and I listened to the voicemails. First, my dad. His voice wasn't worried. It was furious, booming through the speaker like I was an employee who had botched an order. "Sterling, I don't know what kind of childish game you're playing. But it stops now. Your mother's health is at risk. The restaurant suppliers are calling. You need to fix this. Immediately. You owe us that much. Owed them? I nearly laughed out loud. I had given them over $300,000, years of my life, and they had cut me out of their will, dismissed my career, and chosen to reward the daughter who was stealing from them. I saved the voicemail not out of guilt, but as a reminder of exactly who he was. Next was Delphine. Her voicemail was pure venom. You think you can just walk away, Sterling? She spat. You are the most selfish person I have ever met. Leaving us high and dry like this. You're just jealous. That's all it's ever been. You're trying to tear this family apart. Selfish. Jealous. The words were so absurd, so completely disconnected from reality, that they lost all power to hurt me. I deleted it. Then came my mom. Her texts were a masterclass in manipulation. A flood of guilt trips designed to pull at the heartstrings she had spent a lifetime installing. How could you do this to me, Sterling? After everything I've been through. I raised you better than this. Your father is so stressed he can't sleep. Don't you remember when you were little and I used to sit with you for hours while you drew? I've always been your biggest supporter. I stared at those words, her attempt to twist the knife. But she hadn't been my supporter. Not when I needed her to stand up for me. Not when they laughed at my dreams. Her support had always been conditional. A currency she used to keep me in line. I didn't reply. I couldn't let her words drag me back into their chaos. The barrage didn't stop. By morning, the messages had grown more desperate. Delphine sent another text. You'll regret this. We'll take legal action if we have to. Legal action? For what? For stopping my voluntary financial support? It was laughable. My dad's second call came that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. The restaurants can't survive without your help, he said. His voice less angry now, more strained. You're destroying everything I've built. You're destroying it, I thought. You and your golden girl. Through it all, I stayed silent. Each message, each call was a desperate grab to pull me back into their drama, to reestablish the control they had lost. But I saw it clearly now. They didn't want me, their son. They just wanted my money, my compliance, my silence. I checked my bank account again, confirming the canceled payments. The balance was higher than it had been in years. It was the first day of my financial freedom. I wasn't their ATM anymore. I was Sterling, and I was done being their backup plan. I thought their desperate calls and manipulative texts were the worst of it. I thought that by staying silent, they would eventually give up and be forced to face the consequences of their own actions. I was wrong. I had underestimated their capacity for cruelty. I had underestimated my father. About a week after I cut them off, my world was turned upside down. It started with a phone call from one of my biggest clients, a hotel developer I had worked with for years. Sterling, he said, his voice unusually formal. We need to talk. I just saw something online. We need to put the downtown project on hold until we can get this sorted out. Sorted out? I asked, confused. What are you talking about, Robert? There's an article, he said hesitantly, on one of those local Austin news blogs. It's about you and your family. Just read it, Sterling. We'll talk after. He hung up. My hands were trembling as I typed the name of the blog into my search bar. And there it was, the top story. The headline felt like a physical blow. Local patriarch Arthur heartbroken as architect's son allegedly exploits family finances. The article featured a large, sympathetic photo of my father, his face etched with fake lines of worry and sorrow. It was a masterpiece of fiction, a carefully crafted narrative designed to destroy me. He had spun a tale for the reporter, painting me as a failed architect whose business was on the verge of collapse. He claimed that for years, I had been pressuring him and my ailing mother for money. He said I had emotionally manipulated them, draining their life savings to fund my failing projects. And when they finally had nothing left to give, he claimed I had a breakdown, cut them off, and was now refusing to answer their desperate calls. It was my entire life inverted. Every sacrifice I had made was twisted into an act of selfishness. Every dollar I had given was painted as a dollar I had taken. I scrolled down, my stomach churning. There were quotes from anonymous family friends, expressing their concern for Arthur and Helen. There was even a veiled quote from Delphine. "It's just been so hard on my parents," she was quoted as saying. "We're just trying to support them through this difficult time." The comments section was a cesspool. Strangers were calling me a monster, a disgrace, an elder abuser. My professional reputation, the one thing I had built for myself, the one thing that was truly mine, was being systematically dismantled by my own father. The phone calls started coming in, first from other clients, then from colleagues, then from friends who had seen the article and didn't know what to believe. My projects were put on hold. My professional credibility was in tatters. My father hadn't just cut me out of the family. He was trying to cut me out of the life I had built. He was trying to burn my entire world to the ground. That night, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by the silence of a life that was suddenly on hold. The rage I felt was different now. It wasn't the hot, wounded anger of a betrayed son. It was a cold, calculated fury. This was no longer a family drama. This was a war. He had attacked my livelihood, my name. He had made a public declaration of war, and I knew then that I could no longer afford to be silent. I had to fight back, not just to clear my name, but for my very survival. They had left me with nothing to lose, and in doing so, they had made their greatest mistake. They had made me dangerous. For 2 days I was paralyzed. The public shaming campaign my father had launched was brutally effective. My email inbox was a mix of canceled meetings and concerned messages from colleagues. My name, once associated with innovative design, was now linked to financial exploitation. I knew I couldn't let it stand, but my word against my father's? He was a local institution. I was just his son. I needed more than the truth. I needed proof. My mind kept going back to Liam. He was the only other person who knew the whole story. He had the key, but he was terrified. Getting him to talk would be nearly impossible. I had to try. I sent him a text using the same burner number he had used before. "Liam, I know you're scared, but my dad is trying to ruin me publicly. I need your help. What he's doing to me, he'll do to you eventually. Meet me." For hours, there was no reply. I started to lose hope. Then, just after midnight, my phone buzzed. Same place. Tomorrow. 10 p.m. The next night, the coffee shop was almost empty. Liam was already there, looking even more haggard than the last time I'd seen him. He was wringing his hands, his eyes darting around the room. "This is a mistake," he whispered as I sat down. "Arthur, you don't know what he's like. He'll destroy me. He's already trying to destroy me," I said, my voice low and intense. "And you're next, Liam. You know you are. Right now, you're just Delphine's quiet husband. But when this all blows up, when the restaurant's finances finally collapse completely under the weight of her theft, who do you think they're going to blame? They'll throw you under the bus to protect her. You'll be the fall guy." I could see the fear in his eyes. He knew I was right. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice shaking. "I don't want the copies anymore," I said, leaning in. "I need the originals. All of them. The bank statements, the receipts, the incorporation papers for her shell company. Everything you showed me." He looked like he was going to be sick. "I can't. She'd kill me." "She's already killing you, Liam. Slowly. She's turned you into an accomplice. Is this how you want to live your life? Constantly looking over your shoulder? Or do you want to be free?" I pushed a business card across the table. It was for a top divorce lawyer in the city. "You give me the evidence and I'll give you this. A head start. A way out. I'll even cover your initial legal fees." I was offering him an escape. A chance to break free from the toxic dynasty he had married into. I saw the conflict warring in his eyes. Fear versus the desperate hope for a different life. He sat there for a long time, staring at the card. The silence stretched on, thick with tension. Finally, he looked up at me. His expression hardened with a newfound resolve. "He threatened my job," Liam said quietly. "Arthur called my boss. Told him I was unstable. I have to do this. For my own survival. He reached into the briefcase at his feet and pulled out the thick manila envelope. This one felt heavier, more substantial. "It's all in here," he said, sliding it across the table. "The originals. Everything. Don't tell them you got it from me. Just ruin them, Sterling. They deserve it." I took the envelope. Felt like a weapon. "Thank you, Liam," I said. "You're doing the right thing." He just nodded, stood up, and walked out without another word. I sat there for a moment, the evidence in my hands. The game had changed. My father had brought the fight into the public square, thinking I would crumble. But he didn't realize I wasn't alone. I had an ally, and now I had the ammunition I needed to burn his empire of lies to the ground. With the original documents in my possession, I didn't hesitate. My first call was to the best corporate litigation lawyer in Austin. My second was to a PR firm. The strategy was no longer defensive. It was time to attack. We worked quickly. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Davies, drafted a cease and desist letter to the blog that had published the original story, along with a demand for a full retraction. The PR firm began preparing a press release, a counter-narrative backed by undeniable proof. But a press release wasn't enough. I wanted to see their faces when their world came crashing down. Ms. Davies arranged a formal meeting at her downtown law office. We sent a legal notice to my father, my mother, and Delphine, requesting their presence for an urgent discussion regarding the financial state of the family businesses and recent defamatory public statements. We also invited their longtime family lawyer, a man who had known me since I was a child. They arrived together, a united front of arrogance. My father looked powerful and confident in his expensive suit. Delphine was clinging to his arm, looking like a victim. My mother trailed behind them, her face a mask of worried innocence. They walked into the boardroom as if they owned the place. They saw me sitting at the far end of the long mahogany table next to Ms. Davies, and their expressions hardened. "What is the meaning of this, Sterling?" my father boomed, taking a seat opposite me. "We have nothing to say to you." "I believe you will," Ms. Davies said calmly, gesturing to the chairs. Just as their lawyer began to speak, the door to the boardroom opened again. A woman walked in. It was Sarah Jenkins, one of the most respected investigative journalists in the state, a woman known for her tough, expose-style reporting. My father's face turned pale. "What is she doing here?" he demanded. "She's an old friend," I said, my voice cold and even. "I thought she might be interested in a story about family, loyalty, and financial ruin." The confidence drained from their faces, replaced by a dawning sense of panic. Ms. Davies began. She didn't raise her voice. She simply, methodically laid out the truth. She started by presenting copies of my own bank records, showing the hundreds of thousands of dollars I had transferred to them over the years. With each transaction, she stated the purpose: $50,000 to cover Delphine's failed business loan, $20,000 for Mrs. Helen's heart surgery copayment, $5,000 to cover the restaurant's payroll. My mother began to weep silently. My father's face was turning a blotchy red. Then, Ms. Davies brought out the main event, the contents of Liam's envelope. She projected the incorporation documents for Delphine's shell company onto the large screen at the end of the room. She showed the bank statements, the systematic transfer of funds from the restaurant accounts. She showed the credit card bills, detailing the lavish spending. Delphine gasped, "Those are fake. He's lying." "These are certified bank records, Ms. Delphine," Ms. Davies said coolly. "Perjury is a serious offense." Their lawyer was stunned into silence, shuffling through the copies we had provided him, his face ashen. Then, the final blow. We played a recording. Liam had agreed to one final conversation with Delphine, and he had worn a wire. Her voice filled the silent boardroom, clear as day, admitting to the scheme, laughing about how easy it was to fool my dad, and how my money had been the perfect cover. "Sterling is so desperate for Daddy's approval. He'll pay for anything," her recorded voice sneered. The room was utterly silent. Delphine looked like she was about to faint. My father stared at the screen, his face a mixture of disbelief and pure, unadulterated fury. He finally turned his gaze from the screen to his daughter, and for the first time in my life, I saw the adoration in his eyes curdle into contempt. I stood up. My voice was steady, devoid of the emotion that had tormented me for years. "I gave you everything," I said, looking directly at my father. "My money, my time, my loyalty. In return, you slandered my name and tried to destroy my career to cover up her crimes. You said we were done. You were right." I turned and looked at the journalist, who had been scribbling notes furiously. "The story is all yours, Sarah." Then I walked out of that boardroom, leaving them to the wolves. I didn't look back. The reckoning had come. I didn't feel joy or triumph. I just felt free. I didn't need to do anything else. The story, once released, took on a life of its own. Sarah Jenkins's article was explosive. It had everything: a respected local family, embezzlement, betrayal, a public smear campaign. It was the biggest scandal to hit the Austin business community in years. The fallout was swift and brutal. My father's empire, built on a carefully crafted image of family and tradition, crumbled into ash. The restaurants were the first to go. Loyal customers, disgusted by the story, abandoned them overnight. The local news stations parked their vans outside the flagship location. My father, once a proud patriarch, was now a pariah. Suppliers, many of whom hadn't been paid in months, called in their debts all at once. Within 2 months, the company filed for bankruptcy. The barbecue pits that had been burning for 50 years went cold. Delphine faced her own personal hell. The story exposed her not just as a thief, but as a fool. The lavish lifestyle she had flaunted on social media was now seen for what it was: stolen. Several high-end vendors she had stiffed, emboldened by the news, filed lawsuits against her. The DA's office opened an investigation into financial fraud. Liam, true to his word, filed for divorce the day after the story broke, citing irreconcilable differences. Her world, built on lies and my money, had completely imploded. My parents' fate was perhaps the most tragic. Their reputation was ruined. Their business was gone. The legal fees to deal with the bankruptcy and Delphine's impending criminal charges ate up what was left of their savings. They were forced to sell the house I grew up in, the grand symbol of their success. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that they had moved into a small, rented condo on the outskirts of town. The friend told me that Arthur and Helen barely spoke to each other anymore, their days filled with quiet, bitter recriminations. He blamed her for raising a spoiled, criminal daughter. She blamed him for his blind favoritism and the arrogance that led to their downfall. The legacy he had been so obsessed with protecting was now a pile of smoldering ruins. I didn't feel happy about their misery, but I didn't feel guilty either. I felt a profound sense of justice. They had made their choices, built their lives on a foundation of lies and cruelty, and now the house of cards had finally collapsed. That chapter of my life, the one filled with pain and obligation, was well and truly over. I had survived their storm, and now I was finally free to step into the sunlight. Thank you for staying with me until now. Please show your support by liking this video and typing 1 in the comments below. It lets me know that you've given me a like and are here with me on this journey. Your encouragement is a huge source of motivation. Comment number 1 below and stay with me as I continue my story. After the storm passed, an unfamiliar quiet settled over my life. There were no more panicked phone calls, no more demands on my time or my bank account. The silence was unsettling at first, like the eerie calm after a tornado, but slowly it began to feel like peace. My career, which my father had tried so hard to sabotage, rebounded with surprising force. The story of my ordeal had inadvertently become the best character reference I could have ever asked for. Clients saw me not as a victim, but as a man of integrity who had stood up to injustice. The projects that had been put on hold were reinstated. New clients, drawn by the story, began to call. My reputation was not only restored, it was enhanced. With my finances finally my own, I was able to officially launch my sustainable architecture firm. The dream my family had mocked became my reality. I poured all the energy I had once spent on their dramas into my work. Our firm quickly gained a reputation for innovative, beautiful design. We were winning awards, getting features in national magazines, the kind of recognition I had once craved from my father, I was now earning for myself. But the most important rebuilding I did wasn't professional. It was personal. I started to build a new foundation for my life, one based not on blood obligation, but on genuine connection and mutual respect. My family became my small circle of close friends who had stood by me, the ones who had listened to my rants, who had sent me links to the slanderous articles with messages saying, "We know who you are. Don't let him win." We started a tradition of Sunday gatherings, not out of duty, but out of a genuine desire to be together. Sometimes we'd barbecue in my backyard, and the smell of wood smoke, once a reminder of my father's world, was now just the scent of good food and easy companionship. One evening, I received a letter in the mail. It was postmarked from Portland, Oregon. It was from Liam. He wrote that his divorce was finalized and that he had moved out of state to start over. He had found a new job and was seeing a therapist to work through the years of emotional abuse he had endured. "I know thank you isn't enough," he wrote at the end of the letter. "But you didn't just save yourself, Sterling. You saved me too. You gave me the courage to leave a toxic situation I thought I was trapped in forever. I hope you found the peace you deserve." I folded the letter and put it away. He was right. I was finding peace. I even started dating someone, a wonderful woman who was kind and supportive, who celebrated my successes as if they were her own. A year after the meeting in the lawyer's office, I bought a piece of land overlooking the hills outside of Austin, and I began to design my own home. It wasn't large or extravagant. It was a modest, beautiful structure made of glass and wood and stone, designed to let the light in from every angle. Every blueprint I drew, every wall I planned, felt like an act of reclamation. I wasn't just building a house. I was building a sanctuary. I was finally, truly building a home. It's been a few years now since that storm. I'm standing on the deck of the house I built for myself, looking out at the Texas sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The air is calm, and my life is quiet in a way I never thought possible. I don't think about them much anymore. The anger has faded, leaving behind not forgiveness, but a kind of peaceful indifference. They are figures from a past life, a story that happened to someone else. Occasionally, I'll hear a whisper through the grapevine. "I heard Delphine avoided jail time but ended up with a mountain of debt and a criminal record that makes it impossible for her to find meaningful work. She lives in a small apartment, her lavish lifestyle a distant memory. I heard my parents are still together, living in that small condo, trapped in a bitter silence. Their golden world turned to dust. I don't take any pleasure in their downfall, but I do see it as the natural conclusion to the life they chose to live. It's a stark reminder that what we build on lies will eventually crumble." Looking back, I learned some vital lessons from the wreckage of my old life. The most important one is that respect has to start with yourself. I spent years, decades, trying to earn their love and approval, thinking I had to prove my worth. I thought if I just gave more, worked harder, sacrificed enough, they would finally see me. But no amount of money or success could change the narrative they had written for me in their heads. I wasn't the hero of their story, and I never would be. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was survival. It was the moment I finally said, "My life, my work, and my peace of mind are not negotiable." It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but it was also the most liberating. It taught me to value my own worth, to walk away from people who don't, even if they share your blood. I hope, if you're listening to this and my story resonates with you in any way, that you take that to heart. You cannot force someone to value you. You cannot buy respect with sacrifice. All you can do is build your own life on a foundation of self-worth. Family isn't an obligation to endure pain. It's not a debt you have to spend your life repaying. A true family is a bond that should lift you up, that should be your safe harbor in a storm. And if it isn't, you have every right to let go. You have every right to pick up your own tools, your own blueprints, and build a sanctuary for yourself. It's never too late to start building. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. It wasn't easy to share, but it's my truth. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you love? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. Your stories matter, and I'm grateful for every one of you who listened. Please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories.